Okay, the job today, we're going to change this multi-port valve. You can see it's got a broken flange bolt there, and it's been very hard to operate to switch between the different modes. So the plan is we'll disconnect these couplings and the coupling here that connects it to the filter, and then replace it with this brand new unit I've got sitting here. They just arrived in the post a couple of days ago, and then we'll basically just swap one unit out for the other. So same manufacturer, same sizes, should be a straightforward connection. The new unit's a little bit different, but we'll make an attack by trying to get rid of these bolts first. They look pretty rusted in, so we'll give that a shot first with some penetration oil, and then let that soak in, and then we'll try and disconnect it, and we'll disconnect the couplings at the same time. So this is the bag of goodies that came with the multi-port valve, and it's got all the components like the clamps and the bolts and the couplings to connect it. So we'll just open this up and sort them out to use them in the right order. Yeah, unfortunately, penetrating oil couldn't separate these things, so just whipped out the grinder and cut them. So we'll pull those off and undo the couplings, and that'll be the removable part. Right, I've just loosened the couplings with a pipe wrench, so we can now just take them off by hand. I want to reuse these parts so we don't have to glue anything back. So this should be a straightforward thing. You just hear the water releasing. We might get a bit of water coming out of this, but it should just be draining back to the pool. Right. Get the old parts. Now I should just be able to pull this off. Okay, a bit of water coming out. Try to do this one-handed. Right, there we go. That's the old unit. Now we'll have to put the valve on the new unit as well. So we'll do that first, get that ready, and then get that ready for prep with some nylon tape to make it watertight, and just make sure all the O-rings get replaced with the new ones, and we should be good to go. Just another thing, we'll just clean up all the surfaces so that there's no old tape left on them. We'll take all these things off here, and we'll just clean all the surface here, so when we put the new clamp on, there shouldn't be anything creating a leak in the future, so anything around the edges and so on, and we'll make sure the O-rings all go in place. Right, so just fitting the new valve. There's an O-ring that sits below the valve here that has to sit between the valve and the top of the filter, and it also has to just slot on top of this pipe here at the bottom, and then line up with these things. Where the nylon tape was before, I think that was probably, there was some missing O-rings, so they might have just been tactical change there. So I'll put all the new O-rings in place, and just make sure that they line up. Well, once it's dropped to the floor, so we'll make sure that gets put back, and get everything slipped together, and then we'll put the clamp together on the bottom, and then join these up and do a water pressure test. Right, so this is the valve sealer on top. Just be careful that the large O-ring doesn't get trapped through the edge there. I have to just push it back into place. There's a groove that it sits in, so that's not the final position, but just make sure it doesn't get trapped into the inside of the sand filter as you're putting it down. and that you don't knock any O-rings off the connections when you're doing it. So the axle alignment's okay, we just got these things pushed back so that they get out of the way. Right, so that's the finished gap between the two. I had to keep the O-ring in place on the port, the valve itself, with a bit of hydroseal in a few spots just to make sure it didn't get out of the channel, because otherwise it will sit too high and you won't be able to get the clamps on. Alright, with these clamps, just try and get the gap between each as even as possible, which means wind each one down a few times and then switch to the other side. That way you'll keep the pressure distribution even right around the ring. If the gap's way narrow on one side, that means yeah, you've got a distortion in the forces. Probably won't mean you get a leak, but this is best practice if we do it this way. I'll just turn the pump on, so we'll see where we're getting any leaks, where they come from. Just tightening this clamp down. It's almost completely hand tight. And we'll put all these unions on with hand tight as well. Okay, so I've got a bit of work, so I've got to do some work there. Alright, well, that's everything in place and running. There's a slight leak from this coupling when it starts up, so just as must be a small gap. But gets closed by the pressure when the pump comes along. That's the feed in from the pump, and so probably just needs a bit more fettling to get the O-rings properly in place and sufficiently tight. I don't think it needs any more nylon tape or any nylon tape. The O-rings should do the job. All the other connections seem to be okay, and I'll just keep an eye on it and adjust it as necessary. But yeah, new valve. Happy days.